Let's get right back to our conversation with Cliff. You know, when we talk about the seed bank, we talk about Google digitizing books, and the one question which has always bothered me, although I think I've got a fairly good idea why, the continuing rape and degradation and destruction of our home, our planet. Why? Not one international globalist corporation, not one major government on the world is making any serious effort to reverse the looting, the destruction of our home. Not happening.
It does not make any sense.
No,
we have not organized ourselves appropriately.
No, why kill the golden goose?
Right.
Okay, does this suggest that at some level, not all CEOs, not all somebody knows somewhere that this something very big and very unpleasant is going to happen, so what the hell difference does it matter? That's what they're saying. I don't know. Now, the other issue is Denver, right in the center, 2.5 hours either way from coast to coast, something like that. DIA is supposedly linked to underground transport that probably goes under the Rockies, and there is a lot of talk, has been for many, many years, about the very large underground safe dwelling for special folk who could fly in within 2.5 hours, go into an underground transport at the airport, and be, shall we say, secure? I don't know. You got 1.5 miles of water running over you. You got mountain ranges displaced. Who knows? I don't have the answers. Even if it's localized 400-yard tsunamis running over 100 square miles, it doesn't matter. It's not going to be that simple. But isn't it 90% of the world's populace, Cliff, lives on the coast or very close to the ocean? Yeah,
within 30 miles, you get 85% of the planet's populace. But even beyond that, of course, you get almost all the nuclear plants. You get all of the port systems. You get all of the communication sites, and just on and on and on. So
it doesn't have to be 1.5 mile tsunami.
No. And some of the literature, some of the ancient literature that has come through, suggests that this movement is done in a series of fits and starts, little jerks. And this makes sense relative to what's actually going on and how the angular momentum of the planet would attempt to reassert itself under these conditions, and that the bulge being gone would not be a smooth, continuous process. And so even if you were going to shift a great degree, say that the continents were going to spin 3,000 kilometers, as Patrick suggests, well, even under those conditions, it might do it in 3 separate jumps. In which case, that perhaps it would be, as you say, locally devastating, which maybe it's going to come in, 100 miles, 200 miles along the coast, and we're going to have huge levels of destruction at that level. Effectively, our civilization is shot because of
So that would take care of it, sure.
Yeah, and really, the terrible part of this is that much of the civilization may be really at risk from the precursors long before we actually get to such an event, because bear in mind, certain things are predictable. As I was saying, the internal magnetics of the planet are going to get really weird. And so we're going to see, as a noticeable or predictable precursor to this, we would see the poles melt while the temperate zones become colder and have a lot of freezing. So it'd be kind of like, a hair on a naturally occurring bald guy like myself. So there's a little ring of hair around the ears. We're going to have snow around the temperate zone. It may get quite severe. At the same time that the Arctic Circle area may just be totally ice-free. This will have to do with those...
Which has happened before, we know. Yeah.
Correct. And actually, I think Charles Hapgood cites it both in Path of the Poles and the...
right, I think he does.
The maps of the ancient Sea King.
Well, there's trees, everything else down there. I mean, it was obviously green and lush and quite vibrant as a non-ice mass at one time. When and how. I want to, again, call attention to the special material for tonight's program, available through the guest box at my site, rense.com or halfpasthuman.com. Beautifully done. I don't know who did it.
Rebecca Price did all of the graphics for it. That's why we had to wait, was basically we couldn't get my crude graphics to get anything close to the idea, so we had to get a professional involved.
Rebecca, you did a beautiful, brilliant job.
She translated all these very well. I'm very pleased.
Yeah, it's extraordinary, and we will keep that up in a featured story, along with tonight's audio for free for a long time. I'm looking at some of these drawings again and again and just amazed. She is really gifted. That's good. Very good stuff. Okay, so we have 1,000 days, maybe less. Who knows?
The problem is that this is a predictable sequence if you have certain levels of knowledge ahead of time, which has been deprived from us. The powers that be may know it through the Vatican at all, but us as the regular humans, we don't.
Well, that's why I'm looking at Denver as a locus, and there's a lot of weirdness there, and anybody can be there in 2.5 hours, and that's all.
Yeah, and it's one of these genetic kind of things. I've done spelunking. I have no problem with it. I can handle claustrophobia and that kind of stuff, but I'm a small boat kind of guy, so that's what my approach is going to be.
Now, that's a thought. Okay, so somebody's got a boat. It's a stable boat. It's not some sleek sailing yacht. What's the plan? What would the plan be? To cast off? You've got notice. You've got 10 hours. You've got a couple days.
You may have months. You may actually have months. What if we're correct and the ice gives way, say about 6 months on the pole, 6 months before the event occurs? Okay. Well, then we're going to get a huge level of water raised, maybe as much as 50 or 60 feet, even though ultimately it might be 300 feet. It takes a long time to propagate around the planet, but you'd get that initial 50 or 60 foot tidal range shift, and so you'd know that might occur 6 months beforehand. And you'd have satellites going wonky, everything's strange on the planet.
I think they'd all be toast. Yeah. So you take off in your boat, you go out, 1,000 miles, 500 miles, and then you end up stuck in Iowa City, Iowa, when the water's receding?
Well, maybe when you see the Rockies, follow Bugs Bunny's advice and hang a left.
I would say. All right, hang on, gang. We'll be right back. Okay. Lots of things here. Noah's Ark.
Well, it goes even into the Vedic literature. That's you find the water myths everywhere, and if you look at a lot of the Sanskrit stuff, which in my opinion has to be one of the oldest languages around, just based on complexity.
Yeah.
The Vedic myths, the pre-Vedic myths actually talk about this fellow by the name of Manu, who saved the woman who knew the name and uses of all of the plants. And it was from their education that the civilization was able to restart. Mm-hmm. And I like their particular myth because Manu is a small boat guy, no giant ark or anything, just him and this woman and their food and so on. And he was told about it by interaction with sea life. And basically he was a fisherman who knew the sea intimately, and because he knew it intimately, he knew things weren't quite right, and he started getting ready. And when all this happened, they were out in the boat. And there's some other information within that myth structure and some of the writing that goes very specifically and could be almost a log entry in terms of how this thing could play out.
All right. So if you're out at sea, you don't
there's
necessarily
very different strategies. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't necessarily get thrown on the land. You just kind of rise up and you rise back down, or you settle back down.
Yeah, there's other issues. There's going to be huge amounts of debris, because all of our civilization is going to be crumbled up and washed away. There's going to be volcanoes blowing up under your butt, that kind of thing.
Not
it's going to be like something out of a horror movie in many regards.
It's a real dice roll, folks. Now,
exactly.
The Vatican built the world's largest infrared observatory out somewhere in the desert of Arizona. Remember that town 10, 15 years ago? People were asking why they build infrared. What are they looking at? And we hear stories that they're looking at the sun. Looking at the sun, not just a Soho thing. They're looking at the sun, looking for heat signatures, looking for changes. Maybe they're studying the windings you've been talking about. I don't know.
Correct. And actually, if you know how to look at it, and here's something else. How did the Mayans know, and the Egyptians, and these other people know about the polar spin? But they also know about these three other, what are known as heartbeats within the sun in the Vedic tradition: the 22-day, a 25-day, and an internal 37-day cycle. And indeed, some of these things may show up as distortions within the infrared bands. And so it's kind of looking at that in order to be able to see the levels of stress within the magnetic field as a side effect of it.
All right. So I guess the film 2012 is coming out soon. Maybe it's out already. I don't know. Another Hollywood disaster pick.
Who, of course, when they made it, they went and consulted Patrick Garrell. Because
that's what I was getting at. Another disaster flick, but they did talk to somebody who's website is obviously going to become very popular very soon.
Yeah.
We hope this program and your work, which I'm sure you will continue adding to, does as well. We'll update it as needed. This is going to be, boy, talk about a society that's drowning in anxiety already.
Yeah.
The 2012 drum beat is, you can hear it already. People have already put out how many books? Over 150 books already. Just nominal books, but there are going to be lots of things. The potential to manipulate people has never been greater or more easily achieved with the media. And I don't even